Welcome to Senior Living 101, where we get expert takes on the environments where seniors live, work, play, heal, and thrive. This web series is sponsored by SAGE, the Society for the Advancement of Gerontological Environments. And fun fact, everybody who we're talking to on this series is a SAGE member. So all of this expertise is in one organization. Check us out. In this session, we're going to talk through the acronyms and terminology that are unique to senior living. And I'm Trey King, your host, and I'm joined today by our esteemed SAGE president, Jill Schroeder. Jill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I think if you're listening, you've probably heard me on many, many webinars, but yes, I am the current SAGE president, and I'm broadcasting from Minnesota right now. So, hello.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's just get right into it. One of the
Okay.
first things that I was, encountered as a when I started my career design for aging was, just a pile of terminology, and especially with respect to typologies for senior housing. And I think this would be a great way to sort of kick off a conversation about Senior Living 101. Um,
Exactly. The basics, the basics. Everyone gets wrapped up in the terminology and they're confused. So
yeah,
yes, let's
yeah,
clarify that.
100%. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna share my screen with some stuff that you sent ahead of time, and
sure.
I'll let you take it away.
Sure. No, I think this is a great basis to start from because oftentimes people hear that language of, and if you're new to this industry, especially this should help you out understand kind of the basics of what everything means, the language. So people get kind of confused as to what is the difference between an assisted living or an independent living or um, when people say sniff, what does it mean, etc. And I think it's better maybe to start from a very broad picture for senior housing, um, and 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 think of it from a care level perspective. There's early relocations, there's mid relocations, and there's late relocations. And everyone's choosing or moving from their home or wherever they're coming from to another location based on that. What are their needs? Do they have to move, or is it a healthcare move kind of thing? So those early relocations are a light touch. You may not need services. You may not need a nurse. Does that make sense, Trey? It's like,
Yeah, no, it does. And yeah, I think it would be super helpful to go into like kind of the subdivisions because,
yeah,
that was when I first started designing, you think like
yeah,
independent living is one big category, like assisted living is one big category, and there are actually
right.
like there's a lot of nuance there. So,
There is.
yeah.
So with that, before we go into the details of each of those, but that early relocation is that light touch. The mid relocation is that you might need some services, um, you know, but it'll be very minimal at best. And then late relocation is you're definitely going to heavily rely upon some kind of care services for health choices. So what that further breaks out to is a health need versus a socialization or just a better, you know, environment for you to connect to your friends and community, be closer to family per se, that kind of thing. So so of the early relocations, we've got the terminologies that you'll hear, and this will vary per state. So again, this is just an overall, here's your go-to of understanding the terminology, but it may not be the case in every condition. So the terminology in the early relocations, and if you can see this and you're not just listening, you're seeing it on the screen, you can see senior apartments, 55 plus, you've heard that many times probably, or an active adult community. So all of those are very early and likely do not and usually do not have any care component to that or health service component to that. So we'll get into those descriptions. And oh, you already jumped to it. What Trey just jumped to, if you're seeing this, is a slide that further explains those early relocations. So under senior apartments, so that terminology, you can usually assume Most apartment models, so you've got type 1, type 2, type 3, or model 1, model 2, model 3. You're going to have a minimum amount of those. It's going to be abbreviated because it's going to be very, very affordable. So the less floor plan changes you have, the more affordable it becomes in constructability, that kind of thing. So I've listed some things under here under the senior apartments that are usually a go-to that you'd expect. Um, you can see those, Trey, if you want to,
Yeah. Do
if you
you want to
see
kind of
anything.
zoom in, focus on these? Yeah. So one thing that I would love to hear is, what defines a senior apartment, with respect to a standard apartment? Like if I'm from a code
Yeah.
standpoint, what am I looking at in terms of difference or just, with my designer hat on?
Oh, yeah. I would say this, we're going to keep this terminology language 101 basic, just getting this understanding. And then we could have another 101 course that zooms into very obvious code differences between the different buildings. But this is just
Sure.
kind of an overview, just so you can get to know this. So adjacent to the senior apartments is, we're going to call that a type A kind of thing. Affordable, low amount of floor plan changes, um, usually no housing manager on site. You can see some of those descriptors. Um, and usually surface mounted parking. So put your hat on of how can we keep this very affordable, um, accessible, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to do those strategic moves to keep costs to a minimum. The next category would be under this early relocation would be 55 plus apartments. You see that term used all the time. Um, and it might have a qualifier of age or in general years what we're looking for, that kind of thing. So again,
Yeah.
a light touch, but you can see more floor plans to choose from. So still small apartments, but you'll see a sprinkle of more 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, whatever. And there might be some more, um, well, there definitely will be some more amenity spaces, but still the basics. You get a wellness room or mail room, maybe a marketing room, maybe that kind of thing. Depends on the size, but in general, it's a kind of a mid-range target. So it's got a little more fluff than the senior apartment when you're talking that. The next terminology in that early is the active adult community, and in the active adult community, boy, it's mid to high range cost rent rates. You're going to get a lot more floor plans to choose from. You're going to see amenity spaces. It's probably going to be part of a larger campus where we do see a housing manager or they're very close by. You're going to see all kinds of bells and whistles into that active adult, but that price tag supports those amenities, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in that early relocation, it's really it's a choice-based move. And that's important to know. You're moving there by choice. No one's forcing you from home. It's not a doctor's, uh, you know, directive that you need to move out of your home. It's a choice. You're making that choice. And so it's really for socialization for
Yeah.
the most part.
Yeah. So a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle change more
That's
than it
right.
is a healthcare based decision.
That
Yep. At that
that's
point.
right. Yep,
Yep.
that's right. So the
Awesome.
next one is next category kind of thing is the mid relocations. So you're still making a choice. This is a choice-based location. There's again nobody directing you to move out of your home. Yeah, I mean, you might get the nudge from your family or your daughter saying,
Sure.
you Mom, you really should move into an independent living. So in this, the mid relocation, and we call that because it's still choice based, but now there's going to be a little light touch of something that's going to help you as you age. Something in your health, but it's going to be still a very light touch, but it's going to be available. So that's important. So under that category, mid relocations are two terms that you hear all the time: independent living or a senior co-op. Sometimes you hear that. So really, it's independent living. If you understand independent living, that term, you kind of understand senior co-ops. The only difference is a co-op is that resident owns part of however they set up that financial model in whatever state you're in or whatever provider you're in or what or landlord, they're able to own part of that, so they retain some ownership. But really essentially that it's an independent living. You're going to see different floor, plans, and you're going to be able to get some assistance as needed, or as we say, as an a la carte basis. You're going to be able to have a meal provided to you, like usually a dinner. You're going to see some amenity spaces that kind of activate your socialization. So a card playing room or a billiards room, and definitely a wellness, sometimes a beauty shop. So you're going to see those more and more choices of amenities.
Yeah, so I understand that a senior co-op basically is independent living, but with like the ownership structure
You have
of a
ownership,
condo association, or
right?
and what would distinguish a senior co-op from, like one of those earlier categories we discussed is it's got a little more access to amenities that support aging.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's great. So what was that
And
third
that
category you were talking about?
And the third category is the late relocation. So this is really a choice that's based on a healthcare need. So healthcare is your priority. And this might be, and this is instead of choice based, this is a need based choice, need based move or
Yep.
relocation. So mom, you really need to move into an assisted living, or it's a doctor's directive that you need to move into a long-term care. You've had a
Yep.
fall or that kind of thing. So under those late relocations, the terminologies that you'll typically hear here are like I just mentioned, assisted livings or long-term care. But let me go across those terminology: assisted living and assisted living memory care, a skilled nursing facility, and sometimes we call that a SNF. And if you're in this industry, which you are because you're watching this video,
Mm.
we usually don't usually like to say facility. We like to say community, but unfortunately, the terminology is a SNF and it says the word facility. So just know that. And then a hospice care unit. So all of these could be a freestanding building, or they could all be together on a campus as a small group, but we'll get into that in a second. But there's a difference between assisted living and a SNF and a skilled. And that major difference happens with the amount of nurses that are required to be on the campus. So an easy way for you to remember this is assisted living. Worst case scenario, like in the middle of the night, there is usually only, and again, states, only a requirement of only one person needs to be on that campus. So in times of emergency evacuation or anything else, there's only one person, and that person doesn't have to be a nurse.
Yeah.
It could be a
Wow.
maintenance, it could be anyone. So if you're moving in as a senior and you need this assistance, just know there's only there are times where there's only one person that's out there to help. So you still get a bulk of people helping during the day, the main time, but at nighttime, if there's something, just be aware of that. That is a very, very obvious difference. So when you're again jumping in here and learning, there's the difference versus a skilled where nurses are 24 hours on site all the time. So you've got a full nurse staff. So then, like Trey, you were saying, what are the code differences? We could go into another terminology another time of, wow, it's different code categories, obviously, for these building typologies, but these two bases, skilled and versus assisted, are your late relocations. And if you think about it from that perspective, you still get help during the day for assisted living. It's a heavier touch than the others, obviously, of getting assistance, bathing, medications, um, everything all across the board. And of course, you're going to have amenities to support your daily living, etc. Um, but in a skilled, it's a nursing situation. So you're going to have assistance of nurses in everything that you do. So it's a heavier, much heavier touch. So it's a very obvious differential.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes
I
sense.
I like the way you laid it out here. Like, you hear the term spectrum of care talked about
Yeah.
a lot in our circle, and I like even with the colors you're using. For those who are listening, it's a really nicely laid out kind of a visual spectrum of care, ranging from the early stuff
Yep.
in nice cool colors, all the way to the skilled side of things, where nursing is required on site 24 hours a day, in red. So yeah, I like that kind of one to one, and it really like. I think it helps elucidate why we have all of these different categories, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And if you're thinking about it from that, that like we're explaining of high level of care, etc., then it kind of makes sense as to what you're going to include in that building, who's going to interact, what the circulation's going to be like. It kind of makes more sense to you when you're thinking about it.
yeah,
So under each of these categories, like you can see on the screen, you can see some more descriptors that fall into these assisted livings. Like I said, only have one person. Uh, at times meals are provided though, so 3 meals are provided most states, um, so or most conditions, versus like the independent living where you only have one and it's optional, that kind of thing.
yeah,
um, Assisted living memory care though is a type where you have some cognitive, you have to pay attention to the cognitive levels of that resident. Are we experiencing memory loss? Is there some kind of behavior issues that's going to dictate higher needs for elopement or high risk of elopement, and behavior needs like having manipulatives, we call them in the industry, where
yeah,
it's keeping busy, you know
yeah, yep, yep,
and so that would be an assisted living memory care. So you could do things on your own, and you don't necessarily need a nurse helping you with everything, but you do need some things to keep your mind active and you're busy, to keep, as your disease progresses, etc., with memory loss. So that's an assisted living memory care. So it's very specific in that.
yep,
Um, so and then like I said, the skilled nursing facility and the hospice. Hospice is a category that is going to cover, it's built like or similar to a skilled nursing because it is a healthcare model, but it's usually end of life or pain management. Those fit into that category, but you're still going to be assisted with a nurse, etc.
yeah,
So Trey, also too, I've zoned in on the skilled nursing or the SNF, because that's a generic
yeah,
term that is a blanket for a lot of other terminology. So please don't get lost. If you're new to this, please, it's not confusing. It'll make sense. So under a skilled, you have lots of other categories, and the list goes much further than I've spelled out. But basically, it could be a transitional care unit that is a part of or is part of a skilled nursing facility. It could be a trans unit that's part of that skilled nursing or SNF. A long-term care, we've all heard that terminology. A long-term care follows under that. A specialty care, long-term care unit, and then a long-term care memory care unit, which is different from the assisted living memory care unit. So
yeah.
that
Can
one,
can oh, sorry, go ahead.
uh, that one is, you still have all those that you have Alzheimer's or dementia, you're experiencing this or memory loss or behavioral issues, but now
Yeah,
you're in the advanced stages. So you're going to need a nurse assistance with your memory loss. So that one's self-explanatory. Once you know the assisted living memory care, now you know the long-term care memory care. You just need that more healthcare assistance in the later stages of your disease.
yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about what distinguishes a TCU from some of these other kind of sub flavors of a skilled nursing facility?
Absolutely, absolutely. There is a little confusion between a transitional care unit or a TCU, like you just said, Trey,
Yeah,
versus a trans unit. And many times they're grouped together, and then you're like, oh, they're lumped together. I don't understand quite. But let me just explain the two. A transitional care unit is is under that healthcare model, but this could be you're transitioning from a hospital. and you maybe had a hip replacement or a knee replacement or something, and you need therapy every day, but your diagnosis is that you'll likely be returned back home. So you're transitioning to home. You're going
Yeah.
to attend wellness or therapy every day, not wellness, excuse me, therapy. And you're living in a healthcare facility that's a sub acute. So it's not acute care like a hospital, it's a sub
Mm.
acute unit where you're getting all the care you need, the medications, etc. And then you're sent home versus a trans care unit, which we just generically call that. And it's so similar. I don't know why we haven't changed it, but it is the way it is. A trans care unit is where you could be transitioning from a hospital, or it's likely from a hospital, but you're going to transition into an available long-term care bed. So this happens when there aren't any beds available. There aren't any units. They just say beds, but and you're kind of in limbo. You're waiting for one to open up, and it could be weeks, it could be months if you're with a larger provider and that they can place you within their system. But it's a trans care, so you're a long-term care person,
Yeah.
and you just don't have an available bed or a place to move to as your permanent place of residence. So
Yeah. Makes sense.
that's yeah,
That's
and
a
and
yeah
when
great way of kind of hashing it
yeah,
out. Yeah.
and Trey, I like how you asked to explain the TCU. Sometimes when we group that trans unit together with that TCU, the reason is you could be coming from a hospital getting the therapy that you need, and your prognosis isn't to move back home. They thought you could move back
Yeah.
home, but you're not getting better. So you're now going to be in the trans, you know, state where you're going to be transitioned into a long-term care bed. So that's why sometimes those are grouped together.
Yep.
Versus, let me explain the other two
Oh
too.
yeah. Let's do it.
Long-term care unit. Hopefully everyone's still with us and hasn't gotten lost in the terminology. Um, a long-term care unit or an LTC versus a specialty care long-term care unit. So a long-term care unit is simply you're living there, you you only need minimal. You need like your restorative therapy. You don't need physical therapy and occupational therapy. You need your restorative therapy, but you're living your life and you just need that nursing assistance 24/7.
Yeah.
And this is your permanent place of residence until you pass. This is now where you live in nursing care versus a specialty care unit where you could designate a whole wing to a cardiac care, so everyone in that wing is getting similar care to take care of strokes or, stroke, whatever it may be in a long-term care basis. Trach units, we see pediatric long-term
Mm.
care. Those
Yeah.
are all specialties so that the nurses that support you and are there with you as you are living your life know your special care needs versus all spread out throughout this large campus, and you have inconsistencies here and there. So we try to group those needs together sometimes. So
Yeah.
you'll see that.
No,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to keep going?
Sure. Sure. There is another terminology you'll see on your screen. There's the breakdown of those sub kind of categories under skilled. You'll see on the screen there, but off to the right in gray. Oh, go back
Oh,
one more.
whoops.
One more slide, is
Yep.
off to the right in gray is a geri-psych unit, or geriatric behavioral health, or geri-psych we call. So sometimes you'll see those. They aren't that common. So if you hear that terminology, it's still part of a sniff. But now we're dealing with schizophrenia or other behavioral diagnoses where it's a very, very special consideration, and we need to go to extra precautions to take care of those special needs. So that's really quickly what that means. But
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah, the next slide that you're going to, Trey, is now that you've learned all those different typologies of care levels and why you're going to move here and there, and what supports and what other amenities and what are the kind of basic descriptors between that terminology. Now we can even just talk about the campus itself. So you'll see a full continuum of care, a mini continuum of care, or a freestanding building. And essentially, what that means, you can see on the screen, a, a mini continuum simply means there aren't any nurses. It's not a skilled level. It has independent living, assisted living, and an assisted living memory care,
Yeah,
generally speaking.
makes a lot of sense. So I see that like assisted living memory care and I, which I think was the skilled memory care, those are both on the full continuum. Can we talk
The
about
full,
the
yeah.
difference between those two?
Well, now the minute that you on your campus include that nurse that skilled the
Yep.
sniff, now it's a full continuum of care because you can enter in an early stage, those early relocations to mid relocations, and you've got that late relocation. So it's that full continuum. It's that whole, you've got everything there. A mini continuum, for the most part, doesn't include those early relocations that we talked about, the 55 plus or the senior apartments. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but it's that mid relocation and some of those late relocations, the assisted living part. So that's your
Yep.
mini continuum versus full continuum. And then, of course, you have the freestanding. And usually you'll see those as freestanding assisted living or freestanding assisted living memory care.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and so I guess if you were at a mini continuum or freestanding and you needed a higher level of acuity of care,
Yeah,
you would have to go to a dedicated skilled
that's
skilled environment.
that's right.
Yep.
And sometimes, depending on your provider, it might be pretty close by. They might be able to service you with, and bring you, bring that resident and have them choose between a different location that's pretty close by that where they offer a full continuum of care and move into that skilled. So yeah,
Makes sense. So I guess kind
yeah,
of perks and drawbacks, with the full continuum, you have the opportunity to, like, say you have friends in assisted living and you have to move to a skilled environment, then, you have the opportunity to stay on site with them. And then with
yeah,
with the mini continuum and the freestanding, you have a little more, maybe like, depending on, the context, you have maybe the opportunity to choose where you go for skilled care.
yeah. So that socialization, the socialization cues and that kind of thing of why you're moving, etc.
Yeah.
Most of the time when we say a freestanding, whatever model it is, it's maybe in a small town or it's in a larger town where there are so many other choices that you don't really need the other services directly attached to your building. You're still able to access, and socialize with others. But,
Yeah.
you could have friends made um, that have different levels of care and skilled versus independent living, et cetera. And so when you look at those
Yeah.
full continuum of cares, it really is a great way to still stay connected or make new friends of all different levels. I mean, of care. You could be anyone and have all different needs. So it really is a benefit to be close by to all different levels of care, but it's not needed.
Yeah,
It
no,
totally depends on
totally.
the resident. Yeah,
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And I've like anecdotally seen that in the like just in the field too, walking on sites with people. We'll see groups from assisted living saying like, "Oh, we're gonna go visit our friends in in skilled today."
yep,
Yeah,
right.
it's
Or
great.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and then lastly, too, Trey, you'll see, and we've taken this all to all those terminology um, and all the descriptors that describe each of them as a really quick guide to create as a shortcut that you can hit print and hang up at your desk if
Yep.
you need it,
Yep.
at your
You're not going to be able
fingertips.
to read this, but we we'll find a way to share this with you all kind of
Right.
to sidecar with this conversation. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
awesome. Hey, thanks so much for talking us through this today, Jill. This was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, if you want to learn more, Well, one, I would strongly recommend you become a Sage member because we're a great crew. And also you can check out our website. We're going to be posting that spreadsheet, the diagram that Jill just
Yeah,
mentioned. We're putting that all of that online, available at sagefederation.org with some additional resources that are available to members. So go on sagefederation.org and check us out, and also feel free to reach out to either one of us anytime. I'll just plug my email, tking@hksinc.com. And we'll make sure you get what you need.
you're going to be the voice of all the senior living 101s, Trey. I love it. If
Awesome.
you come across the terminology and you're new to the industry and you're like, I'm so confused, I don't quite understand this, shoot Trey a message or send us a message at info@sagefederation.org. We'll try to answer your questions, but we really want this to be a tool for you to learn all the different terminology. So now as you move forth and learn everything else there is to know about senior living, it becomes easier to understand.
Yeah,
So thank
awesome.
you. Thank you, Trey.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks to all of you who are online listening right now. Um, have a great one, everybody.
Bye.